We've talked about a lot of things today, and I feel like some of the theme is a lot about women and our voices, and what a time this is now for us to continue along that path of strength, right?
And the personal is political.
The personal is political. Reclaiming who we are continually and walking in that strength. And I don't know how you feel, but in this moment, I'm really realizing that that's really what it is. It's almost like we have to.
You're listening to The Other 50%, a Her Story of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. This episode is brought to you by the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. They have the most comprehensive suite of tools and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. I've seen their software. It's beautiful. If you're producing film and television, you should call them and tell them I sent you. And as a bonus, they are committed to including and promoting women, and I could not be happier that they are a sponsor of this podcast. For this episode, I sat down with Julia Lynn Huffman. Julia started out in broadcast journalism and acting, but then transitioned to working behind the camera. And having worked in the television industry for over 2 decades and cutting her teeth as a coordinator, writer, producer, shooter, and editor for companies like E! Entertainment, Bochko Productions, and HGTV, Julia went on to direct, write, and produce her own feature film and become one of a handful of female directors to win multiple awards in the film festival circuit and secure worldwide distribution for her first feature film, endorsed by Dr. Jane Goodall, Medicine of the Wolf. Julia just finished her short film, Wolf Spirit, starring world-renowned National Geographic photographer Jim Brandenburg, and will be using the film as a tool for education about the value of wolves and their necessary place on the North American landscape. We talked a lot about wolves and feminism and where we are in this moment in America. It was a very juicy conversation. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. I just put in some great coffee tumblers and mugs. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. In fact, if you're trying to listen to it on a podcast platform and it's not there, let me know so I can make sure that it is there. And if you haven't already, check out our other 2 podcasts, The Kiss My Age Show, which is where women of a certain vintage, grown-ups, talk about anything and everything and all the things that matter, hosted by Lasta Drakovic, Karen Samuelson, and me. And if you fall into that category, please join the Facebook group and join in the conversation. And Exit 38. It's a show where Emily Van Dyne and Sean Patrick Hughes, who seem to be opposites from a political perspective, discuss the issues of the day while trying to find common ground. All right, here's my conversation with Julia. Have a listen. You have a lot of titles. How do you describe what you do?
I would describe myself as a storyteller, a filmmaker, and a coach.
Okay. And specifically, films, television?
I've been focused on filmmaking for the last few years. I am currently in development on 2 different things, which are for television. Mm-hmm. So I come from a background of television producing, got out of it for a couple of years, and now I seem to be gearing up to get back into it. If everything goes as planned.
Now, I know you have a passion project about wolves. Let's talk about that.
Thank you. Well, I made a film called Medicine of the Wolf back in 2014. And I was motivated by my love for the environment and growing up with a woman who raised me. We used to hike in the woods and be outside all the time. So I grew up with an appreciation for wilderness.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in West Virginia, actually. Oh. Southern West Virginia.
Does everyone have the song in their head now? I do.
Almost heaven.
That's the one.
Yes. And it is almost heaven. It's one of them. I mean, I've traveled all over the world, and West Virginia is truly one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. The mountains keep calling me home. And sadly enough, that we wiped out wolves back it was in the 30s. So I didn't grow up around, knowing that there were wild wolves in the woods. I think we had some coyotes and maybe some bobcats, but we had wiped the wolf out a long time ago. But I grew up reading National Geographic magazines and, just kind of having these fantasies and stories in my mind about wolves and, just they're out there in the wilderness and, knowing that they were part of the big web of life, this ecosystem, and they were necessary. So fast forward to wolves were on the endangered species list for 40 years. In fact, I think the wolf inspired the Endangered Species Act to be created in 1974. I think it was the first animal, I believe, to be placed on Endangered Species Act, Endangered Species List. It was the first Bill of Rights for plants and animals. Before that, animals and plants weren't protected. They had no rights. And so that was the first bill put in law to protect them.
This is the thing I've learned today.
Yes.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So fast forward to, we're now into 2012. I'd wanted to make a documentary. I didn't quite know what about. I had some ideas, some things I'd been developing for a couple of years. And I heard wolves were removed from the endangered species list, which I was surprised about because we only had about 5,000 wolves left.
So not because they had repopulated to a point where they were fine?
That's a big controversy, but many scientists believe that 5,000 wolves compared to original numbers were 750,000. 5,000 was not
We're good.
Recovery.
Right.
Right? Now, certain groups would have you believe that was plenty, and now there's a reason that we need to help manage their numbers, i.e. hunt them. I didn't believe that, and most scientists and environmentalists didn't believe that they needed to be removed. But hunting groups, the Safari Club, that big lobbyists have lots of money. You've heard this story before. They've been petitioning for 10 years
because they want to hunt them.
What's
their natural predator?
The only animal that is of some kind of competition to the wolf is cats, big cats. Yeah, so mountain lions. It's still, can be a good fight, but that is the only predator that I know of that actually can kill a wolf.
Okay.
So the wolves are top predator. They're a keystone species, just like sharks. They're necessary. So anyway, I was alarmed, and then when I heard that wolf states across the country were lined up to hunt them, within just a few months of them being removed from the endangered species list, I was alarmed.
Then you were upset.
I was very upset. I was very distraught. And I was moved to make a film about wolves. And so my partner likes to say, yeah, Julia woke up one day and she said she's going to make a film about wolves, and she did. It's like...
It's like that.
Really?
Good for you.
Thanks. It was an adventure.
So how long did you work on that film?
I worked on the film from pre-production to finally finalizing it, I believe, end of 2014, almost 2 years. Yeah.
And then where can we find it?
So it can be found on Amazon, iTunes, VHX, which is my website, which I always like to direct people to because that means that I get paid for people watching it. So there's VHX, iTunes, Hulu, I already said Amazon, and...
Is it VHX.com?
Yes.
Okay.
VHXmedicineofthewolf.com.
Okay.
And I believe that it's now in libraries across the country.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
I was really thrilled to know that now, because that was my ultimate goal, was for it to be an educational tool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misconceptions even still about wolves. So I created the film ultimately to help educate people about the value of the wolf.
I think I should watch it because sitting here I'm thinking, I'm not sure I know the difference between a wolf and a coyote.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And there's a big difference, and they are all part of a similar family tree, but the wolf is a very separate branch. And if you have any dogs, I saw a cat.
Cats.
Okay. Well, many people have dogs, and I always like to say the wolf is in your living room because 98% of all dogs' DNA comes from the wolf. So their ancestor was another version of a wolf that's now become extinct, but they're all part of the same family tree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are they being hunted now?
So, unfortunately, the same thing that was happening in 2012 when I've got to make this film, I've got to save the wolves.
When you stormed the castle?
Yeah. Just, oh my God, we have to do something. right before we were about to finish the film, literally the same week, we were trying to come up with this ending. We had a lot of different ideas, how are we going to end the film, and a judge ruled to put wolves back on the endangered species list. So it was kind of this beautiful thing.
Great.
That was just in the Great Lakes region. My film mostly focuses on wolves in the Great Lake region, back in Minnesota. But out west, it's a different story. So I think originally they were put back on the endangered species list in the 2014 time period. Don't quote me on exactly when.
We'll say ish.
Ish. And then they were removed again. And so right now there's sport hunting going on in Idaho, outside of Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. And I'm sad to say that when a wolf steps out of park boundaries in the Yellowstone National Park, it can be shot. I mean, the second it steps outside the boundaries.
No one's eating wolves. They're just shooting them for fun.
Yeah, you don't eat a wolf. You don't eat a wolf. In fact, people really don't tend to, kill wolves and then sell their pelts either. Back in the day, when we were struggling to survive, people needed to hunt animals for their skins. We don't need to do that anymore today. And sadly, it's incredibly inhumane what a lot of these wolves go through because they're trapped and they sit out in the middle of nowhere and they slowly die a horrible, horrible death.
That's kind of gross.
Yeah, sorry to bring it up, but it's tragic what happens to these animals, and most people just don't realize it. And a lot of people, their taxes pay for this horrible, horrible.
Great.
Right. So it's like, my job has kind of been to, get the film out, educate people, and really just shine the light on what we are doing still as a society. So out in Idaho and in Wyoming and Montana, sadly, hunting season's going on as we speak. Yeah, and there's still very few wolves out there. I can't remember exactly the numbers, but as far as how many they're allowing for, it's about 1/3 of the wolves in each state that they're allowing to be killed.
Now, are they dangerous? Are they going out and killing humans?
No. In fact, there's only 2 wolf-related human deaths in our history, and most of those... Ever, yeah. And those have been related to food and some strange situations going on with one of the wolves had an issue, I believe, some kind of issue with their jaw. And so these wolves are not working within their pack. They don't have the same resources. Something has happened to them. There's been an injury. It's had to do with food. So wolves don't naturally go out and attack human beings. It's a huge myth. And something that I'm hoping to continue to shine a light on, because that Little Red Riding Hood story that's been around since the beginning of time has really stayed in our psyches. I mean, people still come up to me and go, "Really? I don't have to be afraid of the wolf?" And I said, "No, they're actually more afraid of you than you are of them."
All right, so everybody calm down and stop shooting the wolves.
Yeah, and look at look at what goes on in Hollywood. Look what goes on in the stories, The Wolf of Wall Street. There's that film.
It is the archetype of the predator.
It is the archetype of the predator. That's right. And what my aim to do is to reveal to people how much we need the wolf. They're the great healer of the ecosystem. We need the wolf to keep the balance. It's very similar to how a lot of people treat sharks. There's still this thing about sharks being bad, but sharks have such a necessary role in the ecosystem. They're a keystone species as well. And my fiance is a surfer. He's been surfing for 40 years. He's not anti-shark. He just goes in there and goes, "Hey, this is their territory."
Yeah.
Right?
Just be careful.
Be careful. And when you go out to Northern California, there's great whites out there. So just know that when you jump in the water, that's their home.
Don't be a fool. You get what you get.
You get what you get.
All right, let's back up to how did you get into this business in the first place? How did you get here from West Virginia?
Oh my gosh. Well, I had a really good friend who I grew up with in West Virginia, Demetria. And she had moved out to California a couple of years before I had. And she knew I was working at a job. I worked at a news station, and I got a lot of great experience, but I was ready for a change. And I felt really unfulfilled. And she knew that eventually I'd like to get into filmmaking and acting. And she was living in San Diego, and she goes, "Get out here. You can come live with me. Just go." And I remember I finally got to the point where those long nights you sit and stare at the ceiling over and over again, right? When you just know that it's time for a shift.
Yeah, this
right?
is not what I'm doing the rest of my life.
Yeah, you're just like, this is not working. There needs to be change. You need to really just, and I think having that good friend to harness that kind of like courage to come out here from West Virginia was so necessary. So I moved out here.
For sure.
Yeah.
I had a friend I was talking to on the phone as I was sitting in Arizona complaining that I wanted to work in entertainment and wasn't. He just said to me, then go get a job tomorrow. Go get a job in entertainment. And I was like, oh, is that how you
do it?
Yeah, I had no idea.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
You did?
I did.
I love it. Right? I mean, it's like, it's so funny because you hear that so much, right? Well, if you want to do something, go do it.
Do
it.
Just
go do it. And it's like,
it's not a big mystery.
Stop thinking about it, right?
They're not going to knock on your door in West Virginia.
No, you have to drive your car, right, first. So I drove across country. And I had the U-Haul on the top of my Subaru, and
We've all made that trip,
right? So I moved to San Diego, and I always knew I'd move to LA. And I was in San Diego for about 3.5 years. Went to a crazy and interesting and creative acting school. I never allowed myself to do that.
What was the acting school?
It was called Studio 12, and the guy was named Herb Nectar. He's long gone. He was a New York actor, and by the time I met him, he had a little cane, and he was getting up there.
And a cigarette?
Almost. I think he had quit smoking by that time because his health was deteriorating. But he had a scratchy voice.
Yeah.
And those really big, like, glasses that you remembered, like, people wearing in the 50s, like these really thick glasses. And I loved him. When I went to school to be a broadcast journalist, and I wanted to be a news reporter. And the interesting thing about that is it's come back into the picture, the last couple of years. I do have that investigative journalist heart. But I wanted to be an actor, and I just didn't allow myself. I didn't allow myself to want it enough to do it. It was too much of a risk, So when I came out here, I'd already gone to college, and I just decided to allow myself to be an artist for a while. And so I did, and I finally ended up moving to LA about 3.5 years later.
That's great.
Yeah.
So when you first moved here, were you acting or were you producing?
I was bartending.
That seems right. Okay. As you do.
Julie, you have to get the other gig.
Yes, of course.
Sometimes.
I've waited many a table in my day.
Bless you. I actually thought that was harder than bartending, because at least with the bar, I had the structure between me and the customer, right? And
you're not running all over the place.
Yeah, and there can be a lot of issues with food. With a drink, it's kind of straightforward.
Yeah.
And then I can also say, no, I'm not serving you if you're too belligerent. Anyway, you get it. But
there's some boundaries.
There's some boundaries with bartending, or is it illusion? Anyway, so I bartended, and I did some plays. I worked. There was a theater in Old Town called the Knightsbridge Theater, and I did a couple plays there. I did understudies there. I did a couple commercials. I got my first commercial I was really excited about. My God, for Raging Waters. And, I finally started to feel like I was doing that thing that I had hesitated doing when I was younger, and it was hard. Los Angeles is very different from the East Coast.
Yep.
And, I always tell people who move here and say, I don't know about this LA thing. What do you think? I don't think I can. I said, give it 5 years, give it 5 years, because that's when you start to get your bearings. That's when you make a few friends, right? That's when you can not get lost every single, audition you go to.
Well, now there's ways, so you don't have your Thomas Guide on your lap trying to get everywhere.
Right, and we could say we remember when, right, with the Thomas Guide.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I moved here with the Thomas Guide.
Yeah, I just remember, like, literally getting out of my car, opening up the back of my trunk, sitting down on, at the back of my trunk, and, like, opening up the Thomas Guide and just spinning.
What page am I on?
That thing was so thick.
But you usually know your neighborhood because that is the page that ripped out.
Of course, right. But where'd it go? There's only like 5,000 pages in this.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Oh, see, we remember when, Julie.
That's right. Back in the day.
Back in the day with the Thomas Guide. So anyway, yeah, and so I did that for a while. I was a bartender by night and an actor by day, and then I picked up a gig working at E-Entertainment. And I was a production assistant working for E! True Hollywood Stories.
Oh, remember those?
Do you remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah. They went on for a while.
They were great.
Did you like them?
Oh, yeah.
I did. I worked on Sonny Bono. I worked on Russ Meyer. I worked on Bob Guccione, the guy from Penthouse, who I grew to love and thought I was going to hate him because I thought he'd be a male chauvinist pig. And he was an amazing person. So it was fun. And I had producers, my friend Ethan, who I know to this day, who let me sit in on editing sessions and write some segments and do more.
Now, was that exciting? Like, did you think, oh, I could do this too, or do this instead of?
The bartending?
Well, the acting.
Yeah.
I mean, the bartending for sure.
Yeah, because, I mean, when I came out here, you know, I wanted to get into filmmaking and acting. You know, it wasn't like, I gotta be the actor. It was just that I had this passion to be creative. And I was interested in doing both things. My first job in college, I was an intern during the summer for a Hollywood production, a film called Wrestling with God. My friend Jerry, who was the director, I fell in love with filmmaking. And I was assistant to sound, but pretty much did everything, you know. And we were running around, and, you know, I remember it flooded one day, and, like, you know, just crazy stuff where you're climbing up hills, and, you know, just the craziness of filmmaking.
It's always crazy.
Right? I mean, everything, and the lightning was striking when we were trying to do a scene with horse and buggies, right?
Of course.
Right? And this, you know, the crew, everybody was so in it and so committed. And the director was so kind, and I felt so seen and important. And I went, this is, you know, this storytelling, camaraderie stuff is where I want to be. Yeah. So I was kind of holding on to both things when I came out to LA. And, you know, West Virginia, there are some things happening, but there wasn't that much going on there.
It's not a major market, let's say.
No. No, not at all, no.
Okay, after E! True Hollywood Stories, what came next?
So after E! True Hollywood Stories, I actually decided to work on my own project. You know, I was a little bit cocky and a little bit confident, which you need to be. And
Nothing wrong with that.
Right? And I just, you know, borrowed a camera, then eventually bought a camera and went back to West Virginia to try to tell a story that I was always very intrigued about. And I spent a couple of years working on that project about 2 women that were murdered in West Virginia and found right above the hill from where I grew up.
Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty dark, very sad. And the case at that time that I started working on it was considered unsolved. And so there was a lot of mystery around it. And
did you do it as a documentary or as
yes,
a narrative?
I did it as a documentary. Mm-hmm. But once I kind of got 3/4 of the way in it, because I did everything, you know, I shot everything. I hired people to come in. I did the sound. I learned Final Cut Pro. You know, by the time I got about 3/4 of the way in, I realized it was my film school.
Yep.
I say that with a cringe,
yeah.
But it was.
The hard way, but yeah.
Right? So I spent a couple of years in film school, and I did a lot of things the wrong way. I made so many mistakes. I didn't label tapes correctly. I forgot to back up things on hard drives.
Painful.
Nightmare.
You did that once.
Yeah, just nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. And then, you know, then I finally hired somebody to come in and help me edit, and, you know, just there was a lot of learning in that. And then when I finally got to a place where I had something, I just kind of felt like it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And then I went, I gave myself a break because I realized, wait a minute, there was so much learning in that experience.
It was worth it.
Yeah, and I would recommend it to anybody. You know, just go out and do it. Just go out and shoot. Just go. Just learn to put it up on, you know, Final Cut Pro. It doesn't need to be perfect, or iMovie. And just start doing it. And, you know, you will learn. Because you have to if it's your project, or it won't go anywhere. You know, you're not going to finish anything if you don't really learn to do most everything that filmmakers need to learn.
And then you'll also learn if you have the tenacity.
Yes, which is a huge part of it. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I call it pushing boulders up hills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a lot.
Truly, truly does. Yeah. And, you know, I used to run in high school and college, and, you know, I think about that sometimes, you know, that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And that filmmaking takes a lot of pacing, a lot of patience, a lot of pushing boulders up hills.
And a lot of problem solving.
A lot of problem solving, a lot of mistakes. And if it's your baby, then you really learn how to care for it and really you're the one, you're it. So you also learn how to hopefully be a good communicator about what you're trying to do, so people help you.
So you have to have your vision and be able to communicate it.
Yes.
And hold on to it.
Yes. And I saw the value of that when I worked on my second film, which is Medicine of the Wolf. I mean, really that was, I say it's my first film because it was, the Rainbow Murders was really a short that I didn't get out to the public. It was kind of for me. But Medicine of the Wolf was my first feature documentary. And I looked back and I went, ooh, thank God I did the short
first.
It made such a difference in so many decisions that I made. And also it taught me how to really care for something. Because when you're holding on to the story and you're needing to articulate it to people and you're needing to hopefully get famous National Geographic photographers to say, yeah, I'll do an interview with you, you really need to be able to convey what it is, the heart of what it is you want to say and why it is that you want them to be a part of it. And hopefully they feel inspired enough to say yes. Is a huge, huge chunk of being a filmmaker.
And did you get some of those?
Yeah.
Nice.
I was fortunate enough to put together a successful Kickstarter campaign. And I actually hired somebody to come in, because it was my first Kickstarter, to consult me. I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, because you don't want to make all your mistakes on that. That's a whole thing.
No, because a lot of times, as you probably know, you get one shot.
Yeah.
Right? When your story is, displayed to the quote-unquote world, and you contact everyone you know. It's a good idea to have it in place as much as you can.
Yeah, you can't do that a bunch of times.
No. You do not want to inundate your audience. You do not want to bore them, and you do not want to push them away. So it's a very delicate dance. And so I was fortunate enough to have this woman help me and consult me and work with me on a game plan. And we raised $60,000. So we had a successful, successful Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And then I was lucky enough to be awarded the first place Humane Society grant for entertainment. Did I say $20,000?
You said 60.
Okay, so I got $60,000 from the Kickstarter, and then I got a grant, first place grant from the Humane Society. So I took all of that and was able to put a compelling Kickstarter 3-minute video up. So people really got to see what I could do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing, is for people, when you said, did they say yes? I think it's really important to do your best at really doing everything that you can and putting your best foot forward when you do that Kickstarter. So people really get to see you and your capabilities and your vision, and be as clear as you can about it, and that will help people get on board and say, sure, I'll give you an interview. You can come up to my house, like I did with Jim Brandenburg for 2 days. I was up at his home for 2 days. People, that's not a simple thing to get people to let you in their homes and reveal their deepest, thoughts and feelings on subject matter that is controversial and disturbing.
They need to have a lot of confidence in you.
They need to have a lot of confidence in you. It's about building trust with somebody. Yeah. And that's, for me, that's another piece that I really like about filmmaking, particularly documentary filmmaking, is that I'm an empathetic person. It's just kind of what I've come with in this lifetime. I have a lot of empathy and compassion. And it gives me an opportunity to develop a trust in somebody and really hopefully get the best out of them for the story, to tell the story in the best way possible. And I think as women, I think that, there's the things that we bring to the table that, are unique. And I think that as women, we bring that empathy to our stories. And I finally recognize that in myself as one of my strengths.
Yeah.
And getting those interviews where, men have cried. People have really opened up a part of themselves to me and to the audience that has moved people very deeply. And I've gotten great feedback about that. And so I went, okay.
There's your superpower.
That's my superpower. I like that word.
You may have it.
Thank you.
Now, what are you working on now?
Okay.
What's coming up?
What's going on now? Okay, so I just completed, which is something that I've been with for the last year and a half, a short film called Wolf Spirit.
And I'm sensing a theme.
A theme. I say women and wolves. Those are my 2 go-to themes. And it's called Wolf Spirit, and it's just a 9-minute, very short very short. They call them short shorts. I did not
Shorty
know that.
short?
I did not know until I started submitting to festivals. I have a short, under 10 minutes. And it's really, I call it an ode to the wolf. It's just some interview clips that I couldn't use in my Medicine of the Wolf film. And it's very poetic, lots of just sequences of wolves in their natural habitat, and people talking about the value of the wolf. There's a man who reads some quotes from Aldo Leopold, which was a famous man who said the quote, "To look into the eyes of a wolf is to see your own soul." He had an epiphany about wolves when he used to be a hunter, and it's written exclusively about what happened to him, his transformation when he was in the wilderness in wolf country. And there's a man named Chimaying in it who's an elder from the Red Lake Nation. And so it's these different voices of men who I've grown to know and consider friends who have reverence for the wolf. And you don't hear that very often in our culture, right?
No.
You don't hear people talking about reverence. And I think that that word is very important as human beings, to have reverence for each other, but reverence for animals, particularly the wolf. And so that is my hope to convey through the eyes of these men who live in wolf country and have this reverence for the wolf, to convey that in the film as just, an ode to the wolf and a thank you to the wolf for being on the planet, and to celebrate how much we need wolves to be here, and we appreciate the wolf's role in the great web of life.
And I think that's something we're really losing in our Instagram, Snapchat culture. Is the reverence.
I think so too. I mean, and I think we can find it. I have hope that we continue to find that reverence in our own souls. But I do believe in storytelling and filmmaking, particularly, that I get to inspire. That's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy shedding light on things and trying to tell a story in a little bit of a different way, so that it helps somebody to kind of live in that person's shoes and to experience something in a different way, and maybe to let in something a little bit deeper that they wouldn't ordinarily if they were on their social media.
I mean, this is the whole point, right?
It is the whole point.
It is the whole point.
Yeah.
Now, before we turned it on, we just jumped right into kind of the state of women in the world and in the country and in this industry. But let's talk a little bit about that. Just for context, we're recording this on Kavanaugh's first day on the Supreme Court. So we've just been through that whole couple weeks of the hearings and that whole roller coaster. Like, what are you making of this moment in time for women?
Let me just exhale for a minute, because
in a sentence, what's your tweetable on the women's movement 2018?
We have a lot of work to do. And we need to get out and vote in large numbers. As you and I were talking about earlier, with talking about, hey, I want to do this and I want to do that. Well, we can talk about it all we want, but we really have to take the action. So I think that despite my own heartache and rage and sadness around what happened, because I believe Dr. Ford, and I think that most people believe her. And despite of that, a man that was accused of sexually assaulting a woman is now on the Supreme Court as a judge. That is incredibly alarming. So in some ways, I feel that we've come so far as women, with the Me Too movement and, Hillary almost getting elected to be the president of the United States. A woman president, being that close at one time. We've come so far. But I also think that until we are really in those positions of power, making the decisions, that there really isn't going to be safety in knowing that what happened what happened with the whole Dr. Ford Kavanaugh thing is not going to continue to keep happening. We really have to get ourselves in positions. I think recently there was something that came out, a law that was made in California. You might have read it recently, where I think Governor Brown enacted a law that there has to be a certain number of women on boards.
Yes, publicly traded companies have to have one woman on the board, and then have to have 3 by 2015, maybe?
Okay, yeah, which, I mean, that is success. That, to me, that means that we are moving forward, and those kinds of decisions are being made. However, if you look at the Senate, and I don't know what the exact numbers are, but how lopsided we still are in...
I don't think it's even 20% yet.
Okay.
And in the Republican Party Judiciary Committee, it's 0.
That's astounding to me, you know. And I think that it kind of, for me, and I don't know how, you know, I've been kind of hunkering down, you know, in my own home, kind of dealing with the sadness and the despair for the last week. I don't know if other women have been doing the same, but just...
have you seen Facebook? Have you seen the street? Because to me it felt like it became so much bigger than the Supreme Court hearing. That just became symbolic of a much bigger, because people dug in and were so emotional and so going to war about it, that I don't think anyone could even be objective on either side. Yeah. Because then there's a whole swell of, oh, it's a man being destroyed because of a false accusation, which was like, what? Like, statistically you look at that and it doesn't happen. So
no,
we don't know what you're talking about.
No, that's just insanity.
But it did feel bigger, because I think some women, many women, saw it as, once again, a woman being attacked, not being believed, being shut out, being suppressed by the power structure in a much bigger way, at a time when women have started to say, time's up, we've had it, we're not taking it anymore. And to have been in that wave of the wave of transparency and women coming forward just to be smacked down again was so jarring.
Incredibly jarring. And, you know, I was just literally reading this book called The Mother of All Questions by Rebecca Solnit, who is one of my all-time favorite...
She's amazing.
...speakers and authors. And, you know, if you want to get a good injection of feminism to give yourself some,
She's the voice right now.
I don't know about you, but I literally... Before I go to the news, I go to Rebecca Solnit's Facebook page just to get some energy, just to get some hope, just to feel
some clarity
angry.
Of thought.
Right, some clarity of thought. You know, as women, it's still hard for some of us to be angry, you know, because we've been told that, you know, if you're angry, you're crazy.
Well, but we're not rewarded for it.
We're not rewarded for it, right?
For sure.
Right, no, we're not. And men have, you know, seem to feel very okay with being angry.
White men.
White men.
To be very specific.
Yes. And, you know, speaking to that, I did a little exercise where I did a little test where I was looking at my partner's, he's a white man, my partner, and I love him. And I was looking at his Facebook page and seeing the things that he posted about, you know, the president and about his anger, and just, you know, he doesn't have any problem, you know, in the last 2 years, just putting things up there about, you know, how angry he is, and very, very demonstrative about his opinions.
Does he get trolled?
A little bit, but not much. However, the times when I've put stuff up on my page, and I try to be mindful about not just shouting, right? Is that because I'm a woman? Maybe. Maybe it's also just who I am. I try not to just throw up all over the place. Although I want to sometimes. I'm trying. The times that I did voice some anger, 2 men who I don't talk to very often literally started trolling my page and telling me, basically trying to shut it down. And I remember thinking to myself, my gosh, you know, I was caught off guard by it. Really, really caught off guard. And I was thinking to myself, why aren't they on my partner's page? Why do they feel so comfortable, you know, trying to shut my anger down and point out to me that it wasn't useful, it wasn't helpful, we weren't going to get anywhere if we were angry, you know? And it really was alarming to me, and it made me think, wow, you know, what we were talking about earlier, like how far we've come, but yet, you know, we haven't in other ways. You know, I think we're not allowed to be strong. In some scenarios, it's too much for men to handle. They're uncomfortable with our strength. And if we do, like with Dr. Ford, if we do come out and if we do speak our truths, you know, in a very eloquent and...
in the nicest way possible.
And my gosh, if she wasn't diplomatic...
Could she have been more polite about it?
I mean, it was astounding,
yeah.
Right? It was astounding how she handled herself. Such dignity and grace. And she still was condemned for it, right? So I think about the word backlash, and going back to Rebecca Solnit and how much she gives that kind of extra power and strength and, like she's very sustaining in how she writes about these issues with women, culture, and etc., and how we can move forward and how important our voices are right now and to stay strong. But she says, she had said it one time, and she's afraid of the backlash with the Me Too movement.
Well, it always comes.
And it came.
We saw it.
We saw it, and it was horrific. And like we said, we've been, hunkered down. Many of us have been hunkered down. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations or text messages with men and women where it's been like, my God, what is happening? Just horrified, depressed, worse than a lot of us felt when, Trump got elected. The almost worse than the horror of what that brought, because
that was all we afraid of what that would bring.
Afraid of what that would bring. And it, for me anyway, it brought those fears in incredible numbers, in waves upon waves upon waves of, I can't believe this is happening, and it is,
And yet it is.
And it keeps happening.
And we're calling it out, and it's still happening.
Yeah. And, now we're at a point where, it reminds me a bit of, what my mother went through when, back in, I don't know.
The
60s and 70s, the Vietnam protest and, women fighting for equal pay. And, we're still doing that. But,
it ain't over.
It ain't over yet. But, it just reminds me of that time where, okay, now we have to step it up to another level. Women and men, were getting arrests the day that Kavanaugh was confirmed. And I think that, that action now is necessary because of the backlash, just asking nicely isn't working anymore. So that's why I read a lot of Rebecca Solnit, because it gives me it sustains me enough to try to collect myself and figure out, okay, with all the anger, with all the despair, with all my God, how could this even happen in 2018? Are you kidding me? We're still here? How can I take that action in my life to continue to create change in my community, to continue to create change in the workplace? Right? What can I do, small and big, to make sure that I'm doing my part? Because if I stay stuck in the depression, and believe you me, I've been in it in the last few weeks, incredible sadness,
It is about doing your part, I think. Everyone has a part. And so we figure out what our part is, and we do that bit.
I think so.
It's funny, harkening back to something you said a little bit earlier about asking politely. I've been told recently by men who are allies and interested in helping how the message has to be delivered to men and so that they can hear it, which really bothers me because I don't think they get to police how we say it in order to grant it audience. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And yet, it may not be heard unless it is presented in a certain package. And so I vacillate between put it in the package they can hear and burn it down. And I suspect it's somewhere in between.
You and I are kindred sisters from a past life.
Well, we do have the same name.
That's true. All right. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I'm glad you brought it up, actually, because as a woman director, I mean, there's all kinds of other stories I could get into, but this is what I'm dealing with right now, right? It's presently what I've been dealing with
What's the struggle of the day?
This is the struggle of the day. My internal struggle is exactly that, is that I want to be able to articulate things with strength. I've been on the planet for a while now. I'm a grown-up. And I see other people doing it, mostly men. I listen to my partner at home. He has a business at home, and so I hear him on the phone negotiating all the time. And there's the diplomacy, but it's real straightforward, extremely straightforward. And I've had situations where I've done that, and I've watched men do things that are aggressive, and I call it cut you off at your knees tactics. And as a woman, I have that emotional component. And so for me, it's been tricky to watch that play out in some of my business dealings and see that tactic being used and watch what it brings up inside. Like you said, I want to burn it down, but also I know that it's not the best approach.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to get me where I need to be.
Do you want to be right or do you want to be effective?
I find it really useful to talk to a lot of friends and, have people that I can just vent to, right? And just wah, 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 right? Ah, and then get it all out.
Yeah.
Right? That for me is an incredible tool. Whoever will listen, preferably a good friend who cares about me. And then go back to it.
Yeah.
Because
and then gather yourself and go have an adult conversation in a business setting.
Gather. And as women, it's like, how do I become more self-accepting of that part of me that I do need to gather? Mm-hmm. And I wish sometimes, I had a friend one time I called when I was negotiating a contract, and I said, well, what do you think? Do you think I should do that? And she goes, negotiate like a man.
Yeah, I say that to people all the time. When a man asks for it, ask for it.
I said, well, okay, and then there was the doing, mm-hmm. right? Sounds good, okay. But then there's actually doing that. And as women, we can second guess. We don't want to rock boats. We get into not all of us, but I, get into all that things. We tend to be people pleasers.
We spend a lot of time twisting ourselves in pretzels to put it into a pretty package that'll land softly.
Exactly. And so, just have those people that you can talk to and get it all out. So when you're dealing with the person, what I've learned to is say, just keep it short and sweet. And no matter how much I'd like to make it better or give them another option, just sit on my hands. Zip it.
Make the ask and then be quiet.
Mm-hmm. And just believe in myself, and just believe in my abilities and, try to be my own, I was going to say cheerleader, but that's not working anymore. Thank you. It's a much more mature word. Be my own advocate. Cheerleaders are great, but, I'm in the advocate stage now. Be my own advocate and just walk myself through in spite of the discomfort, mm-hmm. right? Because, what I'm trying to just give myself permission around is that there's going to be discomfort. I remember talking to a friend of mine, she's been a working actress for 30 years. She's been on everything. I figured she was just incredibly comfortable with all of it because she's been doing it so long. And I remember one day she said to me, that series that I worked on? I said, yeah, I remember, you were great, so good. She says, I was uncomfortable every day. And I went, oh my God, that's right. That's right. Even people who you'd think they've been doing it forever, they don't get into that. They don't second guess. They don't feel awkward.
They look very confident.
Wrong, right? They're people too.
Yeah.
So it's like just allowing yourself when you're negotiating as a woman to accept that there's going to be discomfort and by God, do it anyway.
There you go. We're back to Louise Hay. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Okay, you gave me some of your advice for people starting out, which is just do it. Do you have any other words of wisdom?
Yeah, I really enjoy, I also teach acting in Burbank. I've worked with actors for many years. I understand actors because I've been an actor. And
where do you teach?
I teach in Burbank called For the Actor Studio with my dear friend, veteran actor Peter Looney. He's been acting for 50 years, and I'm so happy to be able to work with him. We have a great partnership and a lot of fun. So I understand creative people. I understand, a lot about how creative people think and what they need. Keep it short and sweet. But I also found myself to be, a lot of people were contacting me as a filmmaker because I had the successful Kickstarter campaign and I became kind of visible with Medicine of the Wolf. And so, people started sending me emails and asking me questions. And so I started becoming a bit of a filmmaker, advisor, advocate just by default.
Like a coach?
Yeah, like a coach. And so I found myself giving editing notes. And, right now I'm kind of helping somebody take their Kickstarter campaign and rework it and rework their intro because you have 3 minutes to make this kick-butt video and you really got to make the most of it. Right? Mm-hmm. So I learned to do that in creating my own. So I'm giving notes on their 3-minute reel.
Now, can I ask, I assume
Yes.
you charge for this service?
Right now, okay, this has been my way of giving back. So I like to be of service in my life. You know, at different times I've volunteered to do different things. But I realized because so many people were contacting me that for the last few years, I decided that was going to be the way that I was going to give back. And so I've been pretty open to people who have contacted me, and, you know, I hope that I've been of help to them and, you know, just help them get their projects off and running in many different ways, whether it's looking at scripts or looking at documentaries or giving notes or helping people with fundraising campaigns or just, you know, saying, yeah, keep going, you know, you can do it.
You can do
This is
it.
hard, but, you know, you've got a great story and you have so much passion and that's going to carry you. So just, I'm here if you want just a little bit of encouragement, because people did that for me, right? So it's just my way of just passing, you know, the torch along. So I have been doing that for a couple of years as a volunteer, and I've decided that in 2019 that I'm going to put together a website and I'm going to start getting paid for it.
Good.
By gosh.
Good.
You know, yeah.
Do you feel comfortable about making that transition, or are you terrified to start saying to people, yes, and that will be $300 an hour?
That's such an interesting question, because if you would have asked me that in other areas a couple of years ago, I probably would have said, oh my God, yeah, I'm so afraid. But I've walked through that now enough times with being an acting coach and a filmmaker and, you know, lots of development contract deals and learning how to know my worth. You know, just lots of exercises in knowing my worth.
That's the ticket right there. As I'm pointing at you.
Yes.
Is to know your worth and to own that.
It really is. And I think for me, the only way to get to now where I'm saying, you know what, Julie, no, I don't have a problem with it, is just by walking through it and having the uncomfortable, you know, walking through that uncomfortability of, oh, but, you know, well, maybe I, you know, because as women, we can do that sometimes. I don't know,
what do you
should
think?
I? Oh, little old me. You know, but it's great to feel that I'm worth it. I know what I can offer, and I also know that I've helped people, and I know that I will continue to help people. I've seen it in their work. You know, it's been revealed to me that, you know, things that I've helped people with, they've been successful. You know, so the proof's in the pudding, right? Isn't that what they say? The proof's in the pudding.
Right. Good.
Yeah, so hopefully in 2019, I'll send you my link and say, hey, Julie, if you know anybody who's wants to start a campaign for their film or short or their project, you know, please send them my way. I haven't thought of a name yet, but that's coming.
That's my favorite thing, is thinking of names. Okay, let me turn this off and
good.
think of a name for you. Do you want to give out how people can reach you? Okay, so I'll put on my website how people can reach you. We'll do a link to your website for that. Is there anything we didn't talk about that we should have talked about?
Wow, we covered a lot of really great material.
Do you want to discuss the politics of changing your name when you get married?
Sure.
I just think that's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally down with it. Yeah.
All right, so you're getting married, thinking about to change your name or not to change your name? Or have you already decided?
It's so interesting you brought that up, because I recently dropped my last name, Huffman. I haven't changed it legally, but I, you know, in social media and things like that, I dropped.
You've been going by Julia Lynn.
I've been going by Julia Lynn.
Which, by the way, is my birth name, Julia Lynn.
See?
Which is weird.
And I used to be Julie, so yeah.
We're basically the same person.
I know. This is crazy. So yes, so I am engaged to be married, and
Congratulations.
thank you. We waited 9 years, so I'm very proud that we waited until we felt ready.
Okay, now it's time.
We're ready. We thought about it long enough. We're in. So it's a really interesting topic to me, because when I let go of my last name, Huffman, on some level, I felt this shift. And it was kind of epiphany to realize as a woman that there was nobody saying that I needed to do this or needed to do that but myself.
Yeah.
Somehow or another, I thought it was some rule, right?
Well, it's more a moray than a rule, I guess.
Yeah, but in other words, that it just wasn't something to confront. It wasn't a place to go. It wasn't my right to reconsider whether that worked for me. And maybe it's something about getting into my 40s. Maybe it's something about having a lot of life experience.
You know, so what Tracy Ellis Ross, did you see her talk she did I'm going to say it wrong, it was either for Cosmopolitan or for Glamour, and she said, "My life is mine." And hearing that, when have you ever heard a woman say that? It was so radical. I was like, what? Yes.
Yes.
My life is mine.
Yes.
So your name is yours.
I think you hit it right on the head. She hits it right on the head. Thank God for women who have been talking about this, because it's, these seeds, I think that these seeds have been planted. Maybe I just wasn't ready to hear them until, somewhere.
Well, it's so counter-conditioning.
Yeah.
It contradicts all the other conditioning you get your whole life.
It really does.
And that your life is for everyone else.
My life is for somebody else. Other people have made my decisions, And all of a sudden, I think it was this feeling of empowerment and strength and, hey, wait a minute.
It's my name.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's stop here. That doesn't resonate for me anymore. And I also gave myself permission to be in the hallway, which is where I am right now, which is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure yet.
To be in the hallway, I like that.
I'm in the hallway.
In between.
I'm in the in-between place of, and I feel okay with it. And actually, more than okay, I feel empowered by it. I've also given myself permission not to go out and, which is something I used to do when I was younger, if I made some kind of decision or needed to, make a change, I had to go tell everybody about it.
Yeah. Which opens you up for everyone telling you what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. You don't need
and I'm happy to talk about it today. However, I didn't need to go yell it in the rooftops in order to give myself permission. I just did it quietly, right?
Beautiful.
I changed my Facebook name.
You rebel.
I'm such a rebel. But it was a step. I know, it's really funny.
Baby steps, baby
it's
steps.
so funny. It's
but
like,
I bet it was a big deal. Like, I bet you were like agonizing. Do I change it on Facebook? What does that mean?
It was. And can I take it back? How many times can you take it back? There are limits.
Will people still be able to find me?
Will they all find me? So then a couple times it's like, I'll have to tell people, well, if I make a new friend, I'm actually Julia Huffman. It cracks me up, because I have to tell people who I am, right? Because I've never gone by Julia Lynn. But it kind of reminds me of years ago when I quit smoking. That finally, when I finally quit smoking, and I did it, I had to take a pack of cigarettes and I had to put it in the drawer. And there was something about knowing it was right there that all of a sudden it just shifted me. So it's like, I don't have to do anything. Nobody's forcing my hand, right? I can go back anytime. But this feels right now. This being in the hallway, not having to explain it to anybody, not having to claim it, not having to, shout it from the rooftops. This feels right to be in this place, and actually I feel really good. My partner and I have discussed his name before, and I said, I'm not sure about that. I'm really not sure about taking the name, and so we're having a discussion about it right now. I may just keep my name, Julia Lynn. I may actually create my own last name, which
go.
I mean, how radical is that? Right?
People do it. Does he have an opinion one way or the other? Does he care?
Well, interesting enough, and I don't consider my partner to be someone who is traditional, I feel like he's a feminist. I feel like he, is incredibly supportive of me being it wouldn't work anyway, but of me being very independent. And I love that. I need that. It works really well. However, what I learned about him is that he really does want me to take his last name. And so then now I'm in a little bit of an interesting place where I didn't know that about him. So we're going to have some more discussions about it. And, it's territory that's sensitive.
Yeah.
If that is something that's rooted, it's such a tradition, right? It's such a tradition.
I realize I keep nodding and not being verbal. This is an audio recording.
But, we've talked about a lot of things today, and, I feel like some of the theme is a lot about women and our voices and what a time this is now for us to continue along that path of strength, right?
And the personal is political.
The personal is political. Reclaiming who we are continually and walking in that strength. And I don't know how you feel, but in this moment, I'm really realizing that that's really what it is. It's almost like we have to.
I've talked to a lot of people about we've all reluctantly become activists because we have to.
Yes. Yes. It was kind of like, you know, where do we go now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, there ain't no going backwards.
No.
Okay, so where are we going? We need to go in strength. You know, I think part of not taking a man's last name, I don't see anything wrong with taking it. Let me just say that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything wrong with it, and I'm not saying that I won't. However, I felt so empowered when I let go of my father's last name and gave myself permission to think about it and consider. That showed me something as a woman, that I still have a lot more to learn and to take back.
And I think the power is in the choice, regardless of what you end up choosing.
To give yourself the time, right, and the space to make that choice from a place of strength and knowing.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it.
Yes, and that's not always easy to do as a woman, but I think if we do it, then we can continue to encourage each other, right?
Yeah.
That it's possible, even if it's something as small as letting go of a name, not taking a name. Who am I? You know, asking that question over and over again. Who am I? You know, who am I? Who am I in this world? And those things matter on some level.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure. Thank you, Julie.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Julia Lynn Huffman for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms, and also go subscribe to Exit 38 and the Kiss My Age show. Thanks for listening. See you next time.